Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner who has a product, a service, or a message that you believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind-the-scenes look into the real-world marketing and networking tactics and strategies for getting what you have in front of you to a lot more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and now let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode, as I know all of you are as well, being at another interview. And I've gotten such wonderful feedback from all of you about the incredible stories of everyone that has been on this podcast. And obviously we're now well over 400 episodes and almost 200 interviews in. And it's something that I'm very grateful for, but not just my guests, but I'm so grateful for all the listeners that continue to tune in each week. And, who I have for you today is, besides having an incredible haircut that I am a little bit lenient towards because it's something that I truly relate with. And I know this is an audio podcast, but you can't see how handsome he is. But if you know what my haircut is, you can start to put two and two together. And the individual I have for you today, he's a business consultant and strategist. But what I really like about his consulting and strategy behind what he teaches is getting people to the next level. And I believe that no one likes to be stagnant in any area of their business, whether you're new to business, whether you've been in business for a while and you're established and you're just kind of going through the monotonies. And I know you hear the saying, marry the monotonies, but life should be exciting. Business should be exciting. You should be able to go to that next level. And we're going to talk about that and so much more in today's episode. So Adam Strong, welcome to today's episode.
Listen, I'm absolutely over the moon, and you're doing such a great job, Scott. And I'm a big fan of you, and you're a big fan of your show. And listen, I love it that the fact that two great, handsome, bald guys can get on here and have a great conversation.
Absolutely, and I could not agree more. And again, appreciate the support. So, Adam, before we go into all the stuff that you're doing now with the coaching and consulting and the strategy behind all of that. What my audience always loves to know, and as do I, is what do you feel was, the or one of the catalytic moments for you, that light bulb moment for you that allowed you to start traveling down this path that you're currently on that has led you to all the things that you're doing today?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, interestingly enough, I had a pretty tough childhood when I grew up, right? I actually lost my hair at the age of 10 through alopecia. So alopecia, a common form of stress and worry, but lost my hair, had a pretty crappy childhood, got bullied a lot, that kind of stuff, right? And 11 years old was a very special age. I suppose my midlife crisis happened very early on, Scott, right? So interestingly enough, I got into, well, first of all, just through my experiences and stuff, I got into entrepreneurship. I got my first taste of entrepreneurship. What I did, actually, we didn't live that far from the golf course. I started collecting golf balls, started foraging through bushes, started jumping in streams. And I couldn't afford the welly boots that you go in. I didn't have the money to do that, right? I literally just take my socks and shoes on, get in the cold water and just literally get, really like jump in the nettles and the stinging nettles, foraging through, deep forest to try and get golf balls and sell them right around the fairway. And I remember the very first time I did this, right? I was at the edge of the fairway. I was around hole 15. And there was two guys, must have been in their late 60s. They came running over to me and I'm like, hey, did you know this is a golf course? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we didn't want to hit you with our golf balls. You're really young. We didn't want to. And so they were kind of fear for my safety. And they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, I'm collecting lost golf balls. And they're like, oh, okay. Do you mind if I have a look through your bucket? I'm like, sure. So they started inspecting my balls and things like that. I had like Dunlops and Nikes, like the really expensive balls. You pay like 15, 20 bucks for a ball. It's like crazy, right? Then I started getting into sales negotiation. I literally didn't really it didn't really occur to me at the time. Then I started really kind of getting good with this, right? And condition was important, brand was important. And there's nothing more embarrassing than getting to your last four holes and you're down to one golf ball. There's nothing that worse than what if you couldn't finish a game? You look like such an idiot, right? You don't want your competitor, your buddy trying to beat you. It's just embarrassing, right? So that's where it kind of got, that's where I got my first taste of entrepreneurship for me.
It's interesting. Every entrepreneur has a different journey, but there's always this pivotal moment that I don't want to say it becomes an addiction, but once the lid, and so many people can relate to this that are listening, once the lid of entrepreneurship is taken off and you realize how much abundance is out there and how much possibility and potential, it's a mountain that there is no peak, but you're still willing to climb it anyway because you're always reaching for more. So in that experience of sales and negotiation and starting to collect those golf balls and then reselling them, what was the biggest learning lesson that you took away from that experience that you're still to this day, years and years later, able to bring into your, the strategy behind what you teach and the consulting that you now do?
It's a great question. And I think one of the most powerful things that I learned from a really young age is being able to walk away. That to me is like so powerful, and I'm sure you've experienced this, or have heard stories from clients or customers or people that are listening here, right? Where it's kind of like where you know your worth, you know your self-worth, and you're prepared to walk away regardless. Because guess what? Hey, I've got what you want. How do you value it? Like, seriously, how do you value what I have for you? If you don't want to finish your game, then no worries. See you later, because I know exactly what I'm worth is. So what I learned from when I was young was, number one, be prepared to walk away. Number two, don't be offended if the other person says no. And I think that's so powerful, because I think we can become so emotionally attached to the outcome. And I feel like, especially if you're running a service-driven business, right? And we become so emotionally attached to the outcome, what it does, it starts to, and the other person, for whatever reason, maybe you had an expectation, right? And it didn't work out the way you thought it was going to be. And then guess what? Then your inner critic starts creeping in, and you start to look at life in a different perspective. Maybe negativity starts to creep in, and you start to like think, well, am I any good? You start to judge yourself, compare yourself to others and things like that. And then it all goes kind of kaput a little bit. So for me, that was that was a really crucial lesson when I was young.
I can just relate to you on a lot of different levels. I actually had two friends. One was younger when they went through similar to what you went through at 11 with alopecia. And another was a buddy of mine, his wife later in life ended up going through that. What do you feel? Because again, there's two different narratives, right? You can go through that experience like you did, no matter what age it is, and you can drown in your sorrows, or you can use it as a superpower, being resilient, learning lessons, inspiring and motivating others. And I'm sure you were on both sides of the coin at some point, going through that at such a young age. On a personal side, when did you start to harness the experience that you went through as a superpower that enabled you to grow and expand and become who you are today?
Well, for me, I also got into elite athletics at that time. So like I said, 11 was a very special age for me. It's like a midlife crisis. I got into athletics. I was an asthma sufferer at the time. And I remember turning up at the running track. Now, I didn't really, I wasn't close to my parents. My parents were separated when I was like 1 or something like that. And so I didn't really have the father figure around me. I didn't have the mentors, or like the, like the wealthy uncle that had a business. So when he was, you know what I mean? I didn't have that around me. So for me, I had to really fend for myself when I was young. And so when I got into elite athletics, I learned a lot purely because, number one, when I turned up to the athletics track for the very first time, and she's like, "Hey, how can I help you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm interested in joining." And they're like, "So tell me about your experience." Zero. Then I started comparing myself and started judging myself. And I remember the first 6 months, it was hell for me because I couldn't even run 100 meters without having an asthma attack. It was crazy. People would say to me, "Why did you get into running when you had an asthma sufferer?" So one of the things I learned really young is that actually elite athletics actually was a catalyst. It was a double reinforcement of my experience into entrepreneurship, mental toughness, resilience, as you mentioned, right? Things like clarity, living life with purpose, and for me, while all the young kids were playing video games, in the wintertime when it was like freezing, like -5 Celsius outside or whatever it is, me, I was putting in the hard work on a Tuesday and Thursday evening, competing at the weekends and just grinding, and guess what? My confidence went through the roof. It went through the roof. And that, to me, that helped me propel me forward. And I take those same skill sets that I have learned from a very young age into today's world.
I love that. And so with everything that you're doing now, and it's a mixture, obviously if someone's a new business owner, but what you and I were talking about in the pre-show is that business owner that's established, whether it's successful or not. They're kind of, they've been in it for some amount of time. They're potentially disenchanted, uninspired. What do you feel causes the stagnation for a business owner, no matter how long or how little they've been in business? And what can they do to start to shake themselves out of it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's a number of questions that you need to ask yourself. The first of all is, what was the reason why you set up the business in the first place? Was it for freedom? Was it for money? What was the expectation that you expected when you actually set the business up in the first place, right? That's the first question. Secondly, what is your actual vision? Like, where do you see yourself in like 5, 10 years time? What is the legacy piece of what you do, why you do it? And I think that's so crucially important because you mentioned the word disenchanted, and it's a powerful word. And I feel like sometimes we can really lose our way, and especially when we're working in the trenches, and we kind of like, especially if you're a solopreneur or maybe run a small team, you're wearing many different hats, right? And sometimes it's really difficult to take a step back, right? And I like to use the word take inventory. So what I mean by that is looking at what are the things that are going well in your business right now, and what are the things that aren't going so well in your business, evaluating, and then looking at yourself, like, what do I bring to the table? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Okay, what is it that I need to do to take things to the next level? Do I? And it amazes me, right, Scott? It amazes me the fact that people to this day still think that they have the knowledge and the know-how to work things out for themselves. I can tell you this now, it's going to take you a hell of a long time unless you get someone that's been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. When I first got into running, believe it or not, my very first coach, who in his heyday, he was an Olympic champion. What I loved about him is he took nobody's like me and he turned them into champions. I was an asthma sufferer, dude. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if you can turn someone like me into a champion, I'm sold.
You know, it's a lot of it has to do with our belief systems, but what I believe in is the willingness to fail,
Mm-hmm.
because any successful business owner at some stage in their business, they've had a failure. And from that failure comes a lesson learned where you never want to make that mistake again. So you end up creating a success path to go a different direction to have a different outcome.
For
So,
real.
so Adam, for the person that's listening to this, that is even having a difficult time answering the first question, you know, why did I get started this business in the first, they're just so clouded right now. What can someone do to get regrounded and to
Mhm.
really feel their feet on the ground again, to really start running forward in their business if they more or less have lost their way?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing that you need to think to yourself, and most people that are in that situation, they're seeking something, and they're normally seeking clarity, right? You know, a confused mind never buys. You have to try and keep life simple, right? Um, I think that the very first piece of advice that I give to a lot of my clients that are in this state. In fact, I was just working with two clients 3 weeks ago in London, and I asked them some very simple questions. First of all, what is your purpose? Like, seriously, what is your purpose? Why do you do what you do? And it goes back to that. And a really good ideology of using Simon Sinek's TED Talk, which is the third most downloaded TED Talk, is amazing, you know, and it gives you so much kind of context to what that means. What does purpose mean? So what is your purpose, right? So that's the first thing. Secondly, it goes back to, you know, who's my audience? Like, what are their core pain points? What are their challenges? What is keeping them up at night? What's making them sick or whatever it is, right? Really getting an understanding of who is it that you're actually speaking to in the first place. And then the last thing, which I think is extremely important, is thinking about like, where do you want to go? Like, what is the destination? What does it look like? What does it feel? How do you want to change people's lives? Like, people don't remember you for what you do for them. They remember you for the memories that you give them, right? It's like Disney, you know, exactly the same thing. Disney does exactly the same, right? Virgin Atlantic does exactly the same. They create memories. So what are you doing to bring to the market? What are you doing to serve? What are you doing to add value? Um, and again, it's very subjective. You know, I mean, I'm a content creator like you, Scott. I love doing content. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, from podcasting to Clubhouse to whatever it is. For me, what's important is about building trust, because trust has to be earned. You know, I'm not in the market for anyone that just says, hey, so sell me a coaching program or whatever it is. No, we have to build a relationship. I have to know you first before we do anything like that. So hope that kind of gives you some ideas.
No, it completely makes sense. And um, a few months back, um, at the time that we were recording this,
Mm.
I had just gotten off a lead call, and someone that I thought was a random connect call wasn't. They they had watched multiple trainings in a mastermind that we were in, but we had never connected before. She ended up being business partners with one of my former clients who was doing really well with my system. And she recently seeked me out on LinkedIn and started watching some of my trainings that I was doing on LinkedIn Live. And she ended up wanting to hop on a call. And, 15 minutes later, how do we work together? And to the outside looking in, that seems like a very quick transaction. But in all reality, the first touch point I had with this individual was nearly 2 years ago, and
Wow.
and it built and built and built and built, and it led to today. So, for all the people listening out there, Adam was right on point. You know, the word nurture has so many different definitions in business, right? But at the core of what nurture means, it's to build the know, the like, and the trust, right? To not sell and pitch, to build a relationship. Just as we talked about a little bit earlier about the keys to succeeding in business. The most successful business owners are the ones that also have the greatest amount of relationships, because it's not about selling and pitching people, it's creating a connection with someone else and building meaningful relationships, so your name starts to come out of more people's mouths. So before we wind down, how impactful has a professional platform like LinkedIn been for you in establishing your credibility, establishing your expertise, and allowing yourself to connect with more people to drive your business forward?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn for me is probably the number one media platform for us, right? I'm literally on it every day apart from Saturday and Sunday. So, like, for example, Scott, I do at 9 o'clock UK time, I do like a 10-minute LinkedIn live, and they're just value driven, video topic driven posts. That's it, right? They have no expectations. We have a newsletter. And for me, what's great about LinkedIn in particular, I love LinkedIn, by the way. I've now got access to LinkedIn audio, and I ran my first room about 3 weeks ago, which is really cool and exciting. But I think, what I love about LinkedIn is that you can nurture relationships over time, right? You can have that rapport, whatever it is. And, for you guys that are using LinkedIn, I found from over the last couple of years, actually, I use the 3 C's. Connection, right? So got to build real deep connection, real great understanding, collaboration, seeking collaboration, like the way that we're here on the podcast as well, me and Scott. And then the third one is community, or what I call tribe. So building tribes. And I think it's so important because that's kind of how we're working in the digital world right now. And LinkedIn is just a great way to do that. And making sure that you've optimized it correctly, your LinkedIn profile and things like that. In fact, I gave a great talk a couple of weeks ago and just told people about some of the results that we were getting. They were like insane, the amount of results we're getting off it. So if you know how to do it, then jump on that train, 100%.
Yeah, I could not agree more. It's been the number one business driver and relationship driver for our company for years now. And if it's not broken, we're not going to try and fix it. We're going to leave that faucet on as long as we can. So, Adam, as we wind down, if someone is interested in learning more about your consulting and strategy behind how to help business professionals and entrepreneurs level up, where's the best place where they can contact you, whether it be online or offline?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first thing is we run a great Telegram group. Actually, we just started a new Telegram group, which is everything to do with strategy, business, mindset, marketing, branding, all of that juicy stuff. So we'll put the link below anyway. The podcast, we've got the Game Changers Experience podcast, which I absolutely love. And obviously we'll have Scott as well, is going to be on our show as well, which I'm really looking forward to our conversations. And I suppose LinkedIn as well, for me, LinkedIn, come and connect with me on LinkedIn, Adam Strong.
Awesome. And as Adam said, all those links will be in the description of the episode. So you're not going to have to travel too far in order to find him and connect with him. So Adam, final question before we sign off. What does success truly mean to you?
Success means to me to live a life of fulfillment and not regret.
Yeah, life has different meanings and there's different twists and turns. You've been through your fair share. I've been through mine, but living a fulfilled life does not necessarily mean it's tied to a monetary outcome. My big belief is the money shows up when the impact is felt. And as long as you're doing what you're loving doing each and every day, you're going to live not just a fulfilled business life, but a regular fulfilled personal life. So Adam, so grateful to have you on the podcast today. So great that we connected. And I know my audience got so much from this. So thank you again so much for being here today.
It's been a jam, my friend. Really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
And excited to be back on yours. So again, as always, connect with Adam. All his information will be in the description of the episode. And if you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcast, wherever, please do leave us a rating and review. Let us know what you loved about this episode in particular, but also what would you like to see more of. So everyone, please enjoy the rest of your days, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much again for checking out today's episode. And if you are listening through iTunes, Spotify, wherever you are, Please leave me a rating and review. Let me know what you loved, what you would like to see improved, or ideas you have for future episodes. And if you are interested in taking your business to the next level, don't hesitate to go to my website, www.scottaaron.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me, where I can learn more about you, your business, what you're struggling with, and how we can work together. And don't forget to check out my wife, Nancy, and mine, our free community on Facebook called LinkedIn Leads for Life. We would love to see you in there. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you, everyone, for your support. Grateful for each and every one of you.